Hello software folks, that's Medhat Sabry welcoming you again to Techstamina. In this video I'm going to continue talking about the same subject which we have started 2 videos ago. That's the second folkloric habit, detracting our development in the software process, which is incentivizing our people the folkloric way, and that was the well-famed carrot and stick tail or the reward and punish policy. In the previous 2 videos we have come to a conclusion that this definitely, actually this was by deduction, just by using logic, that this kind of incentivization or motivation does not match the type of the mindset or the mindset of people working in this cognitive industry, because you are addressing the needs of the people at the lower level than you should, because we are much more intellectual than people just needing a carrot or just can be beaten by a stick. This is a kind of feed or beat policy for incentivization or for motivation, which does not work except for some low-level creatures, which is definitely not software developers. So you have to address us at the upper segment of our needs, of the hierarchy of needs, the genius hierarchy of needs, once depicted by Maslow. In this episode, this is the third and the last one, I will just give you some support from science to this idea. So let me just summarize 30 years of research in 15 or 10 minutes. I hope I can. Actually, I'm going to take a 30,000 feet flight over these 30 years or so of experimentation on the subject, and I will take 3 milestones, very important milestones. Then we start talking about that, and then we start taking conclusions together. The 3 milestones are, first, let me remind you that these are very eminent psychologists, and then I will call every milestone with the name of the psychologist. That is Karl Duncker, German psychologist, Karl, and that was back in 1945. This is not related to the subject as such, but it was an experiment that was used as a basis for many of the experimentation that was done on behavioral science, in behavioral science, on our subject of motivation and incentivization. Second, Blocksberg. That was the University of Princeton, New Jersey, 1962. Third, Ariel, Dan. I'm not quite sure here about exactly the date and exact, but I would say it's maybe something like 2000 something, either late 90s, 1990s, or early 2000s. These are the 3 milestones that I'm going to discuss and to draw our conclusions from. And let me, before I start discussing each of these, take 2 assumptions with you, or 2 agreements with you. First of all, this is a very long name, so we will refer to this kind of motivation or incentivization simply by extrinsic motivation. It's something coming from the outside of the person that you want to motivate. That's why it's called extrinsic. The second assumption is that when we talk about motivation, we assume that our subjects are satisfied with their payment. So we are not talking here at all. People who work in this industry should be paid nicely enough to be. I don't want any extravagance in payments here. any exaggerations, just paid to have a decent standard of living. Because after that we can start to talk about motivation. Below that we are not talking about motivation at all, we are just talking about survival. Let's take a look from 30,000 feet on the 3 milestones. So let's start by Carl here. What did Carl do? He did what's called a very famous experiment in behavioral science called the candle problem. He was not aiming at incentivization as such, he was aiming about studying the effect of what's called functional fixedness. On the problem or the efficiency of the problem solving skills or capabilities. He used a very simple set of instrumentation, actually, just a candle, a matchbox, and a thumbtacks, a box of thumbtacks. He asked his people, he asked his participants to do the following: to fix this candle to the wall using what he had here in such a way that it doesn't drip any wax, any melted wax, either on the ground or any table beneath, using what they had. And he had 2 versions. I will tell you about the 2 versions because every one has a special significance. He had 2 groups of people actually as a result of that. The first group who tried to work around something and to use the text to fix it some way or another to the wall. Others who tried to actually thought of melting some wax and fixing the candle to the wall. This is the majority actually, and the minority thought differently. They thought of just emptying this and using the box as a receptacle, fixing it with 2 tacks, 3 tacks or whatever it takes, and then using it as a receptacle for the candle. What does that mean? They could break in their minds that barrier of the fixedness of the functionality of this box as a container for the text. He did it in another version. He asked his another group of participants actually to go and solve this with these things situated as you see, with the text outside the box. He had much greater group of success on that, because simply when they saw that empty, they directly went to the idea that this can be a receptacle, and that is what's called the functional fixedness. Because when you see that inside, when you see the text inside the box, you have to use your problem-solving abilities to give them another function. That was not as such related directly to the subject of motivation, or the topic of motivation or incentivization, but it was used by others, as I said, in the long trip of research on motivation. We will see how did Glucksberg use that in his experimentation. So let's see what Glucksberg did based on the candle problem. He used actually, that's the station of milestone of Glucksberg, Princeton University. He used the candle problem as a basis for his experimentation, and he had his people in 2 groups. Group A, which he called the low drive group, to whom he offered no monetary or extrinsic motivation or incentives at all. And he had group B, for whom he offered some monetary or extrinsic motivation in a way. for the low drive people and call that the high drive people, or the high drive group. He told these people here that they are participating in some sort of scientific research to set some rules for performing the candle problem test, and that is going to be used for behavioral or some kind of standards in behavioral science research. Some high purpose he has given them actually. So for these people he offered $5 if you are going to perform in the best 25, the fastest 25 of the group, and $20 if you are the fastest of all, if you are number one. What was the result? Very, very interesting. People in this group outperformed without incentives. People outperformed the high drive people by 3.5 minutes in average. Quite the opposite to what we usually think when we think about extrinsic motivation. More interestingly, he repeated the test, removing or just taking away the effect of the functional fixedness. He repeated the test in the version with the tags outside the box. What happened? Group B with incentives outperformed Group A considerably. What was the deduction out of that? What was the conclusion out of that? Whenever the thing is mechanical, the problem is mechanical, it's straightforward, you have a goal, you have a straightforward goal, and you know the path to it. This is a kind of a mechanical problem. The pay increases or enhances the performance, or the extrinsic motivation enhances the performance. Quite the contrary, if it is some kind of a cognitive work, it just dulls your thinking, exhausts your mind in something outside the problem, and narrows down your focus so that you don't easily find the solution. So, pay performance for the cognitive industry or for the cognitive task causes, if it causes any effect, it causes actually an adverse effect to performance. This is what Glucksberg came to. Let's see the third milestone. In our third milestone, that's Dan's, really, what did he do? He had his people, he had actually 3 groups of people with 3 types of problems. Group for mechanical problems, a group for mechanical problems, a group for tests regarding concentration, and a group for creativity. He had 3 types of puzzles or problems or games. And then for each group he offered 3 levels of rewards. Large, like pizza, medium, and small. When he performed his test, what was the result? Now, the result of Dan's experimentation, which was actually done on the MIT group of students, and was sponsored by United States Federal Bank of Reserve. So, number 1, the more mechanical and straightforward the problem was, he found that the larger the extrinsic motivation, the larger the pay, the better the performance. Number 2, when the test started actually to involve some cognitive skills and abilities, he found that the more the reward, the less the performance. So the results is quite straightforward here, and this is a very respectable research work. Let's take a look on the conclusions that you can take from the 3 milestones. So ladies and gentlemen, before we jump to the conclusions, let me give you a very important hint, because this is a very important question. Someone would ask, that wouldn't work except in the western part of the world where people are paid better and paid more generously actually in their jobs. And there are parts of the world where people actually are not that much nicely paid, so that the need for extrinsic motivation is higher, and that money means more to them. just to put you at ease, this has been repeated 4 years, this and the other tests, I mean, this research work has been repeated in these parts of the world. I don't want to mention, of course, let me just put it like that anonymously. These tests have been repeated on different payment structures in the world, and the result is the same. The conclusion is, ladies and gentlemen, we are incentivizing our people in a cognitive industry, a cognitive intensive industry, the wrong way. We don't understand our industry exactly, we don't understand our people the right way. We must think of other ways to drive our people and to incentivize our people and to give them the right motivation. I will stop discussing the topic at that point, and then I'll come back on some thoughts and solutions about that on later videos. But for the 3 videos now covering this folkloric habit, just rest assured that if you keep sticking to the stick and the carrot, you are doing harm actually to your teams, your people, your organization, and the industry as a whole. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in other videos.